Okay, well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're joining us from in the world today. Or if you're watching us on catch up, because I know that's very popular too. Hello and welcome to the second live Situation Now panel. It's part of a series we run every month. We're live across the world on LinkedIn and YouTube, and we're going to be looking at an extension of the Situation Room, which is Eco Online's main thought leadership platform. And I've got with me two great panel members today. We've got Steph Miller-Harris, who's one of our incident and crisis management solutions specialists, and John Maynard, who's a highly experienced sales engineer across a number of different multiple solutions. Now, what we wanted to look at today was three interesting topics over the next 15 minutes or so that really caught our eye, because there are three global days this month that are quite closely related to what Eco Online does and the work we do with our customers. The first one is World Health Day, which was on the 7th of April. The next one is Earth Day, which is next week on the 22nd of April. And the final one is World Safety and Health at Work Day on the 28th of April. Now, there's some skepticism, I guess, about themed days throughout the year, but these can be important triggers for awareness, education, and action. So let's dive into that first topic. World Health Day on the 7th of April. Now, for me, there was a link there with Forever Chemicals and so on, and that's a big part of what we do. Actually, Earth Day, so World Health Day was the anniversary of the founding of the World Health Organization way back in 1948. So the day is a global platform to highlight major public health challenges and mobilize collective action. And there is increasing evidence of critical links between environmental quality, pollution, and human health. This is particularly the long-term impacts of microplastics and chemicals in drinking water. Research suggests that microplastics are found in about 4/5 of drinking water samples. Bottled water, though, can be even worse, even higher plastic concentrations. And one study found an average of 250,000 microplastic elements per litre, which is, of course, quite a concern. Now, about 90% of those fragments are actually nanoplastics, particularly small, tiny particles, really, which can cross biological barriers like the stomach lining or even the placenta, and that can enter the bloodstream and vital organs. So these can be a real health challenge, really. Now, ironically, these plastics include PET from the bottle itself and polyamide, which is likely from the filters used to purify bottled water in the first place. But it's a growing problem in that concern about microplastics, and it's linked to forever chemicals, or what we call PFAS. And there's a concern because they're exceptionally persistent. They can be difficult to remove and toxic at extremely low levels, really. And the body doesn't naturally get rid of them either. They build up over time. So some studies have shown that up to 98% of UK's rivers contain PFAS, these forever chemicals, and at least one ton present in nearly half of all US tap water samples, including those from private wells. So it's not a quick fix, but it's definitely time on that World Health Day for individuals and businesses to dig into the issue, raise awareness, and just be aware of it, and then make that shift wherever possible to cut out and invest in PFAS-free or plastic-free alternatives. But Steph, turning over to you, what were your thoughts on World Health Day?
Yeah, I suppose coming from a slightly different angle, I think World Health Day is about prevention and not just healthcare. I think it really often gets associated with hospitals and medicines, but its real focus is prevention. And many of today's biggest health challenges don't start in a clinic. They start with how we live, how we work, how we connect and design our environments. And that's why the conversation around environment, well-being, and health are increasingly linked. And health in particular is no longer seen as just an individual issue or a healthcare system issue. It's really becoming a shared responsibility. So governments, businesses, and communities all play a role in shaping the conditions people live in. And World Health Day really creates that moment for us to reflect collectively on that responsibility, not just about personal choices. And I also think trust and transparency are now health issues. Public trust has become a major factor in health outcomes, whether people trust the institutions, the data, and the messaging. And again, World Health Day is highlighting why clear, honest communication matters just as much as scientific advances. So when people understand the risks and feel informed, they're more empowered to engage proactively in their health.
Brilliant. Yeah, great point, Steph. Thanks. And a lot of the points I think are backed up by data and visibility as well, really help to build that trust and transparency. Brilliant. Thanks. John, your thoughts?
Yeah, David, I was thinking about what you were saying about PFAS and, from a safety point of view, from the safety team, PFAS are found in a lot of the PPE that we're using today. A lot of the chemicals and products and safety processes are going to have those forever chemicals in them. Think about things like turnout coats that your fire team might be wearing. That's probably water resistant, and that water resistance traditionally is coming from things like PFAS. So as these products are getting retired, as you're going through your process of sourcing and replacing new products, think about PFAS, think about those forever chemicals when you're purchasing new products. And regulations in your area might have already banned PFAS from those new PPE. But just kind of keep that in the back of your head when you're engaging in sourcing your new PPE, your new safety equipment. Realize it's not just the best PPE that you can get. A lot of times the best PPE now is also going to be PFAS-free.
Brilliant. Thanks, John. Yeah, some really good points there just to think about around World Health Day. So yeah, thank you for those. Let's jump on to our second topic, which is the second of the days, the Earth Day, 22nd of April next week. Now, it's a bit of a background, a bit of a sort of a global focal point for corporate sustainability pledges over the years. So does it still matter though? And if so, why? Well, for me, there's been a lot of talk about rolling back and reducing environmental focus or ESG focus over the last year or so particularly. But this can be an important sort of global rallying cry, I think, really, to bridge the gap between individual concerns and the collective sort of political pressure that swells around this agenda. Now, interestingly, the first Earth Day way back in 1970, so well over 50 years ago now, it was widely credited with actually creating or helping to create the US Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. And a lot of good work's been achieved, obviously, over the years there. But Earth Day faces some modern criticisms, if you like. The elements of greenwashing, where organizations might promote their environmental agenda, but without making real systemic changes, really. And there can be a concern over short-termism as well, where you've got a sort of false sense of progress, really, if it doesn't lead to year-round accountability. But you could argue, I think, and it's valid, that with a reach of over 1 billion people, really, that get engaged with Earth Day, it's more important than ever, I think, really now. It's a vital mechanism, really, for influencing international agendas and protecting the existing environmental safeguards that we have achieved over the last few decades. So perhaps it's just a useful milestone in the year, I think, for a discussion around authentic sustainability, a new term we're starting to hear a little bit more about as employees and consumers increasingly scrutinize those corporate pledges and want to see them turn into real action. But yeah, again, over to Steph. What were your thoughts there, Steph?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I actually come from a oil and energy background. So I think particularly in that space, Earth Day isn't just symbolic. It really highlights how expectations have shifted faster than systems have. And energy companies in particular now operate under intense visibility. So those environmental impacts that maybe were once tolerated or even went unseen are now instantly scrutinized. And Zero Carbon Analytics actually stated that the number of climate-related lawsuits filed each year has nearly tripled since the Paris Agreement in 2015. And that's targeting environmental impacts, emission, and misleading sustainability claims. So I think Earth Day really reinforces the reality that the industry already knows well, that environmental issues escalate quickly into trust, regulatory, and business risks if they're not managed transparently. And the transition isn't about flipping a switch overnight. It's about creating those credible pathways and honest communication, and then learning from past mistakes as well. And I think in my experience, the organizations that handle this the best are those that actually acknowledge the complexity rather than trying to oversimplify sustainability. And in high impact industries, Earth Day isn't just green promises. It's about credibility under scrutiny.
I love that. I love that phrase, credibility under scrutiny. That's a really good way, I think, of summing it all up. If you take away nothing else, it's really being able to establish that credibility through trust and honesty, as you say, for good or bad. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Steph. John, your thoughts?
Yeah, so safety directors, in a lot of cases, it's not just EHS anymore, it's EHS&S. Sustainability is being added to their area of responsibility. So people who might have not have been focused on sustainability are now having to think about it every single day. There's a lot of education required for that transition, and celebrating Earth Day within your team and within your organization is a good way to raise awareness across your entire company. But even if sustainability is not part of your EHS department's remit, worldwide changes and a focus on sustainability is still going to be needed to take it into account. So if your company is using more electric vehicles, do you have processes and procedures for safe handling of those batteries? How do you ensure that you're handling recyclable materials safely? Do your safety procedures take extreme weather into account? So even if sustainability is not part of your safety remit, the focus on sustainability still needs to be something that you're thinking about every single day.
Brilliant. I love that, John. Thanks. Especially making that link between the sort of two overlapping agendas. That's a really great chance to use Earth Day to do just that. And we're hearing a lot of that link. So yeah, great point. Thanks, John. Okay, finally, then our third point, the final of our 3 days was World Safety and Health at Work Day, which is the 28th of April. And this was established by the International Labour Organization, or the ILO, back in 2003. So a little bit younger, if you like, than some of the other days. But this highlights the idea that safety or a safe and healthy working environment is actually a fundamental human right. Now, quite apart, of course, from the human cost of accidents and incidents, the ILO research suggests that occupational accidents and diseases cost the global economy an estimated 4 to 6% of GDP each year. So a real waste, if you like, that could be tracked, perhaps prevented or predicted, hopefully. Now, the focus this year is on invisible dynamics as well, like cultural safety factors and the rising importance of psychosocial safety, or mental health, stress, burnout, if you like, in preventing occupational accidents. Now, last year, 2025, the Chartered Institute of Building issued a report showing that workers experience anxiety or depression, but they also suffer from reduced concentration and fatigue and impaired in judgment, which is linked to that anxiety or depression, if you like. Now, around a quarter of UK construction workers, which is about 2/3 of a million people, had a physical injury at work that was linked directly to a result of poor mental health. So there is a real evidence now that this idea of psychosocial safety or wider safety factors are an issue. And there's clear indications that businesses which prioritize psychological safety see higher productivity, better retention, fewer legal repercussions, of course. And we produced some global research last year, How Safe and Sustainable is Your Workplace, which you can go and get from our website. And we surveyed over 5,700 people around the world, and there's some key findings. 80% of them felt safe, but 44% had reported an accident at the work. 81% would leave a job due to safety concerns, and again, 44% faced daily chemical exposure. And 2/3 of the employees wanted more digital safety tools, and that was rising to 4/5 in the 18 to 34-year-old part of the workforce. So perhaps this year's Safety and Health at Work Day is the time to re-examine your safety culture and make sure that both it and your technology is fit for the modern workplace. Steph, your thoughts, over to you.
Yeah, so I think there's been a real shift from add-on safety to designed-in safety. And what all of this really points to is that safety performance increasingly reflects how work is designed, not just how it's enforced. So culture, technology, processes, and leadership behaviors quietly are shaping those outcomes long before an incident even occurs. And the organizations that perform best don't rely on people compensating for poor systems. They build safety into everyday decisions. And World Safety and Health at Work Day is, again, that reset moment. It's helpful because it creates a space to step back and really ask, does our safety approach actually reflect how people work today? Not just, are we compliant? And also, are our systems clear, realistic, and trusted by the workforce? And that's a very different and more valuable conversation people are starting to have. And if safety culture isn't keeping up with how work actually happens, it won't deliver the outcomes that we expect it to.
Brilliant. Thanks, Steph. And John?
Yeah, so every year on World Health and Safety Day, our Toronto office participates in a fundraiser for the families of workplace accident victims. It's something really important that we do, but while we're there, it's not just employees that participate. We see unions involved, we see management involved, we see government officials coming and being involved as well. That's so important to see everybody on the same page. In a perfect world, we wouldn't need to have these sort of fundraisers, we wouldn't have these sort of accidents. But having that focus, thinking about the consequence, and making sure that everybody from the top of the company to the government ministers who are making the laws, down to the employees who are affected themselves, are all on the same page, is really good to see.
Brilliant. Thanks, John. Brilliant. Well, thanks to Steph and to John today, and to you for joining us. Really, hope you found something useful in there. We covered 3 topics at speed, so there was lots of points hopefully to take away. And there's going to be more on the Situation Room on main site, which you can see through EcoOnline's LinkedIn profile. And there's an article there coming up on crisis management, and we're going to be discussing that particularly next week with an aviation focus. So we'll have a panel next week on the 21st of April. You can sign up by following the link, but watch out for more Situation Now, more Situation Room, and please do have a think as we've got these global days about what you could change and what you could take away to make a difference. Thanks again.